CARA SANDER, document 1121 to 1134. Report dated April 24th regarding the April 21st response to the command post at Columbine High School. Sergeant Chris Tomford gave me several names of individuals to contact for interviews. This is written by reporting officer Obama. Not Obama, Obama. Myself and investigator Dave Brooks contacted Cara Sander at her residence. At 10 o'clock, she had just been interviewed by Susan Rico, correspondent with the television program Extra. After Rico and her photographer left the Sander residence, investigator Brooks and I interviewed Cara Sander. Sander stated on the morning of April 20th, 1999, she and her friend Jennifer Tindall exited Columbine High on the south end, walked towards the senior parking lot. Sander said her car was parked in the parking space 220. Sander stated that as she and Tindall were walking to her vehicle, she heard about 15 shots within a couple of seconds. That's a lot of shots. She asked Tindall, Jen, was that gunshots? She then looked up and saw gunmen at the top of the outside stairs. Gunman, singular, which leads from the senior parking lot to the second level of the school. Sander stated the gunman was standing near the path that runs along the top of the hill. He was to the west of the stairway. She described the gunman as a white male with a very full face, quote, pudgy and overweight. Let me repeat that again for the coincidence theorists. White male, very full face, pudgy, overweight. Now, who would describe Dylan Klebold or even Eric Harris as pudgy and overweight with a fat face? On the other hand, Brian Sargent fits that description. Curious, very curious. Gunman had dark hair, possibly 1.5 inches long. So yeah, not that long. He had dark eyes and dark, thick, bushy eyebrows. Again, who does that match here? Who has the thickest, bushiest eyebrows of all the individuals here? I mean, you could maybe say Dykeman's got some serious eyebrows, but he's skinny and tall, 6'2", narrow face, not round, pudgy, and overweight like Brian Sargent. Obviously, Dylan and Eric don't fit those descriptions. Maybe Joe Stairs got a bit of eyebrows, but yeah, nothing like Brian Sargent. And Eric Vike also at 5'7", and he's rail thin, like a toothpick, so not quite. Who matches this description? Brian Sargent is pretty much the only individual we have matching this description. Okay, he was wearing a long black trench coat that appeared to be closed. He was holding a gun, which she described as fat and large, long and wide. The gunman was holding the handle section of the gun in his right hand. Is Dylan Klebold left-handed? The gun was positioned across his chest. She noticed that the gunman had a blank look on his face, was silent, and had no expression. She said she did not take notice of any jewelry, hat, or mask on the gunman. The gun was one color. She believed it was grayish. Sander stated that there was a white male standing a few feet from the gunman. She stated that the male had no facial hair, was wearing a white t-shirt, short-sleeved, possibly with some red and black writing on the front. She said that this male did not appear startled or scared in any way by what the gunman was doing. She said the white male was standing to the gunman's left. The white male was standing between the gunman and the top of the stairs. Sander said she heard a shot coming from the gunman, which hit an unidentified white female who was near the curb on the north side of the student parking lot. The female was described as white female, possibly 5 feet, with blonde hair. Sander stated the injured female fell onto her knees. Initially, Sander thought the girl had tripped, but then realized the girl had been shot. 2 unidentified females not far from the injured girl began to run towards her to help her. The first of these 2 girls was described as a white female wearing a white shirt and a denim jumper skirt, possibly with light brown hair. Second female, Sander could not recall a description of. Sander said before the 2 girls were able to get the victim up, a male student went to the victim and attempted to lift the victim up. She described this male student as being a white male wearing a dark shirt. This male tried to pick up the injured girl by placing his arms underneath her arms. More shots were fired. Sander stated that she and her friend Tindall ran to her car and got inside. She then put the car in reverse, pulled out of the parking space. She exited the parking lot and drove south on South Pierce Street. Sander did not see the gunman again after she got inside the car. She stated she did not hear any more gunshots after getting in the car. Sander and Tindall drove to Tindall's house, where Sander phoned her mother to tell her she was all right. Mrs. Sander was present during my interview with CARA Sander. Ms. Sander stated at about 11:25 she received a phone call from her daughter. She stated CARA Sander told her there had been a shooting at the school and that this little girl was not getting up. Mrs. Sander stated her daughter described the suspect as being big, with bushy black eyebrows, and very ugly. You know what's curious? Nobody really describes Klebold or Harris as ugly. Or really Joe Stair, Dykeman, Chris Morris, Heckler. Robert Perry and Brian Sargent are the only guys who are described as ugly by many, many different individuals. Curious. I asked CARA Sander whether she noticed anything unusual prior to leaving the school building and walking to the senior parking lot. Sander said she had been in the cafeteria having lunch and nothing appeared strange or odd to her. Sander stated she did not see anyone else in a trench coat and that she heard no one screaming prior to leaving the building. Sander stated on the evening of April 20th she saw pictures of the two deceased suspects, Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris, on the TV. She stated neither of these two suspects were the gunmen she observed at the top of the stairway, holding the gun that she saw after she exited the cafeteria. Let me repeat that again for the coincidence theorists. She said neither of these two suspects were the gunmen she observed at the top of the stairway holding the gun that she saw after she exited the cafeteria. She stated the suspect she saw had a fuller face with darker eyes and thick, dark eyebrows. We asked Sander to look through the Columbine High School 98 yearbook to see if she could identify anyone matching the description of the gunman she had observed. Sander looked over numerous photos and then pointed to a picture and said, "That looks like him." She stated that what stood out to her was that this person had the same expressionless face that she had observed on the gunman. I looked at the index of names associated with the photos on that page. The person in the photo that Sander pointed to was redacted. Photograph was on page redacted in the yearbook. A copy of that page has been made and is attached to this report. Let's see if it is. And it's actually not. They did not attach it to this report. Or in what was released. So that's one of the documents that is not released. I mean, Brian Sargent does fit in the redacted space as far as spacing goes. It's not a short redacted like Joe Stair, but... Okay, a copy of the... Okay, we asked Sander to turn back of the yearbook to see if redacted was in the group of individuals shown in the photo of the Trenchcoat Mafia. The photograph on page 268 of the yearbook. Sander turned to page 268, then began looking at the names of the individuals listed above the photograph. The list only gave first names. Sander quickly put her finger on the list of names and began to read them aloud. She read several names and then read the name redacted. Sander went back to the beginning of the list and counted the number of names. She came back to redacted. She said the number redacted. She then went down to the photograph and began to count from left to right. Redacted persons. On the number redacted, she stopped on the person in the picture who was redacted. When Sander's finger landed on the photograph of redacted, she put her hand over her heart and said, "Oh my God," and then began to cry. Sander expressed concern that redacted might harm her. So here she is, on April 21st, the day after the shooting. She is well aware that Harris and Klebold are dead, whether by suicide or some other means. They're dead, and she is very upset now, and she's crying because she's afraid that redacted might harm her. We're assuming here this is Brian Sargent that she has identified. Redacted photo shows him to be a more heavy-set individual with a round face, short dark hair, and eyebrows that are dark and could possibly be considered bushy. Sander added that the gunman she observed at the school appeared to have a very weighted down trench coat. She describes the coat as looking huge and heavy. Sander drew a diagram of the things she had observed and discussed with me in the interview. A Xerox copy of the diagram is included with the report. And we will get to Tyndall's report next, but let's finish with Sander. This is April 29th report. Okay. April 21st, contacted by John Keekbush, who advised me to call Denise Morgan in reference to information. Okay. At this time, I contacted Denise Morgan by phone. She stated to me she has a friend who lives in the area and that her daughter attends Columbine. She witnessed some of the events. She wished to be interviewed by law enforcement. Okay, so this was CARA Sander. This interview occurred 8:40, 421. She was on the... Okay, Sander advised she was in the parking lot south side of Columbine High School walking toward a car when she heard 15 gunfire shots. And upon turning around and looking toward the school, Sander said she saw the suspects and only one of them was shooting at this time. So 15 shots in a couple seconds by one shooter. Sander said she saw a blonde-haired girl shot in the chest. She saw one of the suspects on top of the stairs by the parking lot with a rifle that was black in color. Sander said that she saw the pictures of the suspects on TV, and she advised me she did not feel that the pictures that were being shown were the suspects she saw, plural, so neither one of them. Neither suspect she saw is who she saw on TV named as suspects. I then asked Sander to describe the suspects. She stated she could describe one of them, and she advised that he had a full face, pale complexion, dark short hair, brown eyes, wearing a black trench coat. During Sander's description of her location and the suspect's location, she indicated she was about 100 feet from the suspects when she saw them. But she stated she feels she could ID them if she saw some photographs. So here's yet another one of dozens of students who is offering that she might be able to ID who she saw, knowing full well that Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris are dead and have already previously been identified, so nothing to do with the suspects they saw. Due to this, I contacted Lieutenant John Kikebush and Sergeant Chris Tomford, advised them of what Sander had told me, in which time they advised me they would immediately send out another investigator, who I later learned was Investigator Diane Obama, to Sander's house to do a more in-depth interview. Okay, so I guess this is out of order because we were going over that. Okay, so here's a May 10th report by Detective Joe Montoya, Denver Police Department. Document 1130. Sander said she saw redacted shooting at students outside of the school April 20th. She said he was wearing a black trench coat and had a long gun. Sander was able to pick redacted out of a photo lineup. Details. Cara Sander is a first-year student, Columbine High. At the time of the shooting, she was outside of the school on the west side. She heard 15 shots. At first, she thought they were firecrackers, but then she saw the two gunmen standing at the ledge over the outside eating area. She was approximately 30 yards from the gunman at the time. Sander said one male was wearing a white t-shirt, the other was wearing a black trench coat. She made eye contact with the male in the black trench coat and said that he was redacted. So she made eye contact with the individual. It wasn't just a brief glimpse while running. Sander described the male in the trench coat, redacted, as a heavy-set male, which was kind of tall and had thick black eyebrows. She said that he was wearing a black trench and was shooting a long gun. I asked her if he was wearing hat or gloves. She said no. No hat, no gloves. Cara said that she did not know who Redacted was prior to the shooting. She first learned his name when she picked his picture out of the Columbine High yearbook for Detective Obama of the Jefferson County Sheriff's Department. Also, if you recall that report, she started crying and in fear when she did so because she knew he was still alive. Sander picked Redacted out of a photo lineup for the detective on May 7th. She stated that the picture in the lineup was different from the one in the yearbook. So here is the October 6th report regarding the October 6th interview. Follow-up interview with Cara Sander, Jefferson County Sheriff's Office South Substation, in reference to the shooting, Columbine High 420. Sander told me on 420, just prior to the shooting, she was with a friend of hers by the name of Jenny Tyndall, who was also a Columbine High student. Cara Sander said they exited Columbine High together through the doors located on the south side of the cafeteria. She said they began walking toward the student parking lot south of the school. Cara said as they approached her vehicle, parked number 220, she heard approximately what sounded to her like gunshots. Cara said she heard approximately 20 of these shots. She said these shots were fired in rapid succession. Again, it would be very helpful for someone to have her listen to full auto fire and semi-auto fire from different weapons so she could identify what she heard. Cara said when she looked toward Columbine High, she saw two male subjects standing approximately 100 yards away to the west from the outside stairway near the cafeteria commons area of Columbine High on a grassy hill. She described these males as the following. Subject 1, white male, black trench coat, black pants. She did not see this subject wearing a hat. Let me read that again. She said she did not see this subject wearing a hat. CARA said subject number 1 was carrying a weapon that she described as approximately 2 feet long, large in size, boxy, and said subject number 1 held this weapon across the front of his body and said he had it pointed downward. Does that sound more like an assault rifle than a shotgun? And how fast can someone actually fire a shotgun? I suppose that boxy weapon could possibly be Harris's rifle. But this is the guy with the trench, not the guy with the shirt. Subject 1 held his weapon across the front of his body, had it pointed downward. She said subject 1 shooting this weapon in an unknown direction at an unknown target. CARA said subject 1 is the suspect she later identified as redacted. Sander said subject 1 appeared to be calm with a blank expression on his face. It's interesting, too, because Harris and Klebold are described as being happy and having the time of their lives, shooting everybody. So I don't know how many, if they did not act alone, were other individuals more somber in this execution. CARA Sander said subject number 2 was standing approximately an arm's length away from subject number 1 and to his left. She described subject number 2 as being a white male, 5'10 to 5'11", tall, weighing approximately 205 to 210 pounds. She said he was wearing a white t-shirt and said also that subject number 2 had dark hair and said it was either dark brown or black, and said his hairstyle was a type of bowl cut as far as she could remember. So subject number 2 is not, Brian Sargent is the one with the bowl cut. Is she identifying Sargent and somebody else? She said subject number 2 had pale-colored skin, chubby face, possibly had bangs that hung approximately halfway down his forehead. That is all, of course, consistent with Brian Sargent. Well, she did say neither one of them were Eric Harris or Dylan Klebold, so interesting. CARA said subject number 2 did not have a firearm or any other items in his hands that she saw. She said laying on the ground between subject number 1 and 2 was a black duffel bag. CARA said she was not positive that subject number 1 and number 2 were with each other due to the fact she did not see them communicate between them. However, she said when the gunshots went off, subject number 2 was not afraid. She said he did not try to leave the area at the time and described him as being calm with a blank expression on his face as well. CARA said this is why she believes that subject number 1 and subject number 2 were together. After hearing the initial gunshots, Jenny Tyndall and her got into her vehicle, rolled the windows down so they could see and hear better what was going on due to the fact that her vehicle had tinted windows. CARA Sander said after rolling the windows down, she heard more gunshots and said she saw a blonde female fall to her knees outside of the cafeteria commons area to the west. CARA said she and Jenny Tyndall exited the parking lot of Columbine High in CARA's vehicle and drove southbound on South Pierce Street toward the subway at Columbine and Pierce. CARA said they did not go to the subway, but instead turned around to go back to Columbine High. She said neither of them still could believe what they had just seen occur at Columbine High School. Wait, what? Why would she go back to Columbine High School? Or not, does that mean at the perimeter, not actually going into the school, just waiting at the perimeter to see what was going on? CARA Sander told me prior to April 20th she did not know who Redacted was, nor did she know the name of Redacted. CARA said, in fact, up until Jeffco investigators Obama and Brooks interviewed her and asked her to look through the Columbine High yearbook, the date of that interview was 4/21, to try to identify who subject number 1 was. She had not seen Redacted, nor had she seen a photograph of him. CARA said when she picked Redacted photograph from the 99 Columbine High School yearbook, this was the first time she had seen a picture of him and learned his name. I asked CARA how certain she was that the person she described as being subject number 1 was in fact Redacted. CARA said without any doubt she is 100% certain that the person she saw and described as subject number 1 was Redacted. Let me read that again for the coincidence theorists. CARA said she is 100% certain without any doubt that the person she saw and described as subject number 1 was Redacted. CARA said she would not care if Redacted had alibi witnesses or if physical evidence and witness statements indicated Redacted was not present and was not involved in the shooting on April 20th at Columbine High. CARA said she would continue to believe subject number 1 was Redacted and none of that would change her mind. So good for her for sticking to what she saw, or at least what she believed she saw. She would not be gaslit. She refused to be gaslit by investigators. CARA Sander told me she had been receiving professional counseling since the shooting. She said she does not know, however, if this counseling is helping or not, and told me she continues to have problems with nightmares. She said that the first few... It would also be curious to see who she sees in her nightmares, because if she's 100% sure she knows who she saw, the nightmares could even be... I mean, obviously there's post-traumatic stress disorder, but how much worse is it if you think the guy that shot at you is actually still alive and not even declared a suspect? She said the first few weeks after returning to Columbine High in August were especially difficult for her and other students. She told me that the students going in and out of Columbine High no longer needed to show their ID, and said anybody can walk in or out of the school without being questioned or asked for ID. She said this makes her both angry and afraid at the same time. It should be noted that while interviewing CARA Sander during this interview, she had a very difficult time talking to me about the incident, especially in the beginning of the interview. CARA would break down and begin to cry. After I talked to her for a while, she became more at ease with this interview. CARA did tell me she very rarely talks about the shooting incident with anybody, including her friends, and she said, however, she has talked to her father about it. I gave CARA Sander my business card and told her if she wanted to speak with a victim advocate in the future, call me, I'd make the arrangement. She also said her friend Jenny Tyndall may want to speak to me about the incident. She said Jenny would give name, number. Okay. Additional information, CARA Sander told me that who she described as subject number 1 and who she described as being the gunman outside of the cafeteria commons area of Columbine High looked huge. She believes subject number 1 took on this appearance because he was wearing a trench coat. CARA said the trench coat seemed to be full of something he was carrying in it. Okay. Is that attempting to make it look like he wasn't overweight and the trench coat made him look bigger, even though she clearly identified his face and made eye contact with the individual? Man, so she was clearly upset, breaking down crying, but at the same time refused to be gaslit. And she said no matter how many witnesses, no matter how many alibis, she knows what she saw. I mean, that's conviction. And it's not really that surprising. I mean, what, 90% of people, 95% of people would break under questioning with authority figures, especially impressionable teenagers. You really got to admire, right or wrong, mistaken or not, you have to admire these teenagers that refuse to be intimidated and gaslit by investigators. Even if they're wrong, they know what they saw, and they're sticking to it. I mean, and that's pretty admirable, especially for people that went through such a tragic and traumatic event. Let's go to Jennifer Tyndall's account, which starts on document 1224. So she basically has the same account. Male wearing black trench coat walking up the stairs next to the building. She noticed another person standing on the hill. Actually, maybe slightly different. So initial interview April 20th between 12:30 and 2 p.m. Follow-up interview April 27th. This is document 1225. Tyndall stated she and CARA Sanders left the school cafeteria, headed for the school parking lot located on the southwest side of the school, when she heard what she believed to be firecrackers. Tyndall turned toward the school, saw a male wearing a black trench coat walking up the stairs next to the building. Tyndall said she noticed another person standing on the hill. The person was shooting at people in the parking lot with a very long black gun. Tyndall recalled wondering why the shooter was not shooting at the person in the black trench coat. The shooter was approximately 6 feet tall, thin-build, brown hair, wore a white t-shirt. Tyndall approximated the distance between her and the shooter as being about the length of the school's gymnasium floor. She saw the shooter fire and hit a girl in the leg. The girl fell to the ground. Unidentified male student tried to assist her. The unidentified male then ran back into the school. Tyndall assumed he was going for help. According to Tyndall, the male in the black trench coat looked in the direction of Clement Park while the other male continued shooting. Tyndall said she and CARA Sanders ran to Sanders' car and drove away. Document 1226, dated report May 12, 1999. Detective Montoya. Jennifer Tyndall was in the senior parking lot when the shooting started. She did get a look at both shooters, but could not make a positive identification on either one. See, if this really was Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris, she would have been able to identify them. And let's see, Because again, if you want to say Cara Sander was just that emotional, she couldn't handle it, she was seeing things, let's see what the girl with her said. Jennifer Tindall was with Cara Sander in the senior parking lot when the shooting started, April 20th. She was approximately 30 to 40 yards to the south of the shooters at the time. Tindall said the first she thought the shooting was a prank, then she saw a blonde female get shot and fall down in the Commons area. At that time, she and Sander made it to their car, left the parking lot area. Tindall said that she first observed the suspect standing at the top of the stairs that overlooked the Commons area. She described him as a thin white male with brown hair, wearing a white short-sleeved t-shirt and tan pants. Let me read that again. Thin white male, brown hair, wearing a white... So this is not the... is this the suspect or the... which guy is this? She described him as a thin white male, brown hair, white short-sleeved t-shirt, tan pants. She then saw the second suspect run up the steps and stand next to the suspect in the white t-shirt. She described him as a heavy-set male. Heavy-set male. Who does that sound like? With black hair that was possibly pulled back into a tail, wearing a long black trench coat that was buttoned up. Okay, well, Dylan Klebold does not have a ponytail. Joe Stair might. Robert Perry might. Brian Sargent does not. Wearing a long black trench that was buttoned up. Tindall saw that the male in the white t-shirt shooting a long gun toward the parking lot and Commons area, but she never saw the other suspect shoot. She did not get a look at the suspects' faces, but insisted that neither suspect she saw was Eric Harris or Dylan Klebold. Let me read that again for the coincidence theorists. She insisted that neither suspect she saw was Eric Harris or Dylan Klebold. So she didn't get a good look at them, but she got a good enough look that it doesn't match Eric Harris or Dylan Klebold. I showed Jennifer Tindall a photo lineup containing a photograph of Redacted. Tindall picked out Redacted as possibly being the male in the black trench coat. I asked Tindall how she was able to pick out Redacted if she did not see the suspects' faces. She said that his build looked similar to the male in the trench coat. Realizing that you cannot see a person's build in a photo lineup, I concluded that Tindall could not positively identify Redacted as one of the shooters, but she admitted she couldn't. She just said it looked like him. All right, let's look at this follow-up report, April 26th, regarding the 21st interview. Okay. White male, black trench coat, standing on top of the hill to the right of the stairs near the cafeteria. Described the subject as tall, with wide, broad shoulders, black hair in a ponytail, black pants, and no mask. The subject did not appear to be holding anything at the time and was facing away from the student parking lot. Jennifer said she saw another white male standing to the right of the first subject, close to the building. This second subject was wearing a white t-shirt, black pants, and appeared to be holding a black gun. This person had brown hair and appeared to be firing the gun in the direction of people eating outside on the stairs and the grassy area. She wasn't certain of the identity of the second subject, but now thinks it was Eric Harris after being told by fellow classmates that Eric Harris was wearing a white shirt. That's the only reason? A lot of people wear white shirts. That's weird. Jennifer said she is absolutely certain that the subject was wearing the white shirt, was holding the gun, and appeared to be firing it. As opposed to other accounts, of course, where the guy in the trench is firing the gun and the guy in the white t-shirt is not. So, a couple of interesting comments here. I asked Jennifer Tindall what information she may have about the Trenchcoat Mafia. Jennifer said she did not have much information, but she did tell me she was afraid of the Trenchcoat Mafia students. She said none of the students had ever bothered her or harassed her, but she was still afraid of them. She would usually see the Trenchcoat Mafia students in the hallways of Columbine High, but did not talk to them. She said that the Trenchcoat Mafia students were distinguishable by their style of dress. She said that other than seeing them in the hallways, she would see them at times gather underneath the stairway or near the bottom of the stairs in the cafeteria. Tindall said they would congregate at that location. Jennifer Tindall said she had seen Brian Sargent with the Trenchcoat Mafia students in this area. She said Brian Sargent wore black clothing, but she did not remember if he wore a trench coat or not. And it's so they must have identified Brian Sargent, because why else are they only talking about him afterwards? Jennifer Tindall said she did not see any of the Trenchcoat Mafia students being harassed by other students. She did not observe the Trenchcoat Mafia students harass other students either. She told me she did not recall seeing any Trenchcoat Mafia students in the cafeteria area on April 20th, 1999. Jennifer Tyndall said she knew of no one who may be manufacturing explosives, devices, and or possessing firearms. I asked Jennifer Tyndall if she knew of anyone who had a double-pierced eyebrow, and she replied, yeah, Nate Dykeman. Jennifer Tyndall told me that information on this came from her friend Christina, who had told her this. And I don't know how many witnesses reported somebody with a double-pierced eyebrow, because they seem to be asking this question a lot, as well as the tie-dye shirt question. Jennifer Tyndall said that on April 20th, she saw the thought of the day on Rebel News Network. She said it said something to the effect of, you shouldn't be inside here today, it's nice outside. It's kind of weird how different people said they saw different things regarding the quote of the day. I guess if they weren't paying attention, it'd be difficult. Jennifer Tyndall said that Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris were on the RNN staff to the best of her knowledge. She believed that on April 20th, an audition was held that day for staff members of the Rebel News Network? Tyndall said her friend Lauren Beachman told her that she had auditioned along with Rachel Scott for the position on the RNN at Columbine High School on April 20th. Jennifer Tyndall said Dylan Klebold was present during these auditions, according to Lauren Beachman. Wait, what? There were auditions that morning? I don't know if that's been corroborated by anybody else. And Rachel Scott had auditioned for these? So, it looks like Tyndall did change her story. But this is way later now. This is a December 9th, 1999 interview. Traver contacted Jennifer Tyndall at her residence with her mom present for the entire interview. At this time, Tyndall stated that the picture she was shown of Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris did look like the individuals she saw outside the cafeteria at Columbine High School. Oh man, so she folded, and her friend did not. Curious. On December 9th, Traver contacted Jennifer Tyndall at her residence. Tyndall's mother is present. She stated she originally thought that the individual she had seen outside of the cafeteria at the bottom of the stairs was redacted. However, after discussing the matter with friends and her family and seeing pictures of Harris and Klebold, she believes that the two subjects she saw on April 20th outside the cafeteria were Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold. So that's curious. Not that she changed her recollection. So she believes she saw Brian Sargent and another individual, but she discussed it with friends and family. So did they say it was just better to go along with telling the police whatever they wanted to? Is that why she told her story? Not because she truly believes that it really was Dylan and Eric. She stated that when she saw the subject at the bottom of the stairs, she thought he was fat because of the trench coat. She thought of redacted. She stated that this subject had a ponytail, but redacted did not have a ponytail. Also, neither did Klebold. After talking about the matter with her mother, she realized that if the subject had guns and other items concealed under the trench coat, it would give him a heavier or fat appearance. She said neither one of the guys were Harris or Klebold. And what would a bowl cut have anything to do with it? What's the explanation on the bowl cut? Tyndall stated that although she did not know Harris or Klebold prior to the incident, she was fairly sure that who she saw after talking with friends and looking through the yearbook and seeing pictures of Klebold and Harris in the media. At this time, Traver submitted the photos from Packet A for Tyndall's interview. Tyndall stated that the image of Eric Harrison, 52, looked like the individual she had seen standing just to the east of the top of the west wide stairs. Also, the image of Dylan Klebold looked like the individual wearing a trench coat who went from the bottom of the west side stairs and walked to the top to talk to Harris. Prior to viewing the photos, Tyndall drew a map where she saw both subjects. Okay. So they, and again, we don't know how many of these students were told by their parents to simply tell the police whatever they wanted to hear, which again makes it impressive, the students that just did not fold to this pressure from authorities, that refused to be gaslit. Very, very curious. Very, very curious. I mean, there's definitely something weird going on. I mean, that much is for sure.